Good evening, everybody. Going to give people a chance to get into the room here, but I'll start my general introductions that you're probably most of you are already quite familiar with. Welcome to our last One Health seminar of the semester. We do 6 seminars each semester, so if you haven't visited before, I hope that you'll enjoy tonight, which I'm sure you will, and that you'll join us again in the spring as well. For those of you who may be new to One Health, well, we just finished up One Health Week celebration at Del Val during One Health Day for the entire globe. But let me give you a little bit of a definition about One Health. For us at Del Val, we kind of look at One Health very simplistically as being, well, we're all on this planet together. Animals, people, the environment. We've got nowhere else to go. And we interact either in positive or negative ways with each other. And if we don't think about what those interactions are like, it can result in some negative things for us. And I think that all of us can easily think of several things that aren't exactly going well at this point. From this, we like to approach problems from a transdisciplinary approach. For each of you, you may be in your major and you're thinking, well, you know, when I leave school, I'm going to go into my major and I'll be working with people who think exactly like I do, and we'll get things done. Well, you know, the real world is a bit different from that. The real world requires people talking to each other from different disciplines to approach problems not only at the local level, but regional and even globally. And this transdisciplinary approach really provides a tremendous opportunity to share ideas, to listen to others, and to actually come up with some solutions. At Del Val, we're trying to introduce all of our students to this concept, and we do that in a variety of ways. One is through classes. And so certainly within my classes, I bring up One Health pretty much every class. In other cases, we introduce our first year students very early on to what One Health is and encourage them to attend these seminars. Would also like to encourage all of our students and our faculty think about ways to work together and research, conducting One Health kinds of on the ground boots working towards a specific problem. And then finally, we have outreach. And this seminar tonight is just a good example of what our outreach is all about. Trying to get people together, both from our campus, people from off our campus, our community, to hear about things that maybe they've never thought of before. Tonight, we're very lucky to have co-sponsors, and these are some co-sponsors that we've had multiple times before, but allow me to introduce Diane Smith. She is with us from Bucks County Audubon Society. And she'd like to tell you a little bit about the organization.
Thank you, Reg. It's our great pleasure to co-sponsor these with you and with Heritage as well. It's a wonderful discipline, and it really speaks to part of our mission, which is to educate folks and to provide stewardship of the environment. And we find that getting people outdoors and connecting with nature is a wonderful way to promote well-being in a lot of different ways. So we're very pleased to be here with you all. For the next slide. These are our upcoming events that we have coming up, which will give you an opportunity to participate with us in some outdoor activities. We're doing our annual Owl Prowl on the 14th of January. That is a night hike. We'll do a little presentation on owls, and then we'll go out into the woods and try and call some owls to us. We're also having a wonderful photography exhibit the end of January through mid-February, which is the National Audubon Society's photography exhibition. I think it's 10 of their very best photos will be on display in large format with some information about the photos, where they were taken and how they were taken. And then right on cue with this topic, we have a forest bathing walk coming up on February 11th. And then one of the great community science programs with National Audubon is the Great Backyard Bird Count, the Saturday of President's Weekend. So we also do guided bird walks, the first and third Saturdays of the month. So there'll be one coming up this Saturday. And I hope to see you at some of our events. Thanks for having us with you, Reg.
Thank you, Diane. Thanks so much to the Bucks County Audubon Society for helping us co-sponsor these events. And also with us this evening is Shannon, who is coming to us from Heritage Conservancy. And Shannon, take it away.
Thank you, Reg and Del Val. It's always great to be here and great to partner again with Bucks Audubon. So at Heritage Conservancy, we've been around since 1958, and we've helped preserve over 16,000 acres of open space, farmland, wildlife habitat, and important watershed areas. So, you might kind of wonder, well, why is a land preservation organization so interested in supporting something like Nature RX that will be spoken about tonight? Well, we got really involved over the last 6 or 7 years with really connecting with the community and people and bringing them to our preserves more. And some of that started with a land preservation project in Croydon at a previously funded Superfund site. And we developed a strong partnership with the local school that's directly next to that preserve. And through time and conversations with administrators and teachers, it became really clear how important supporting student well-being beyond, the environmental education components, was, necessary. There was need, there was concern, and looking for that overlap. So we piloted in 2020 to 21 a program where we used nature as a tool to support social and emotional learning with students. There's an impressive body of research that is growing around the benefits of nature for each and every one of us, no matter our age. But we started with the school and worked with them. And now we have this guide that is available, and I will put that in the chat. It's available as a resource for anyone to use, whether you're a teacher or with your family or students even at Del Val who are dealing with some stressful times. There's some mindfulness videos that are very enjoyable and use natural elements to help kind of guide you through some relaxation strategies. So, it's a free resource. We just want people to use it. And it's also adapted and created in a way to be outside in nature, or simply look at views of nature, or use resources wherever you can find them, whether you're in or out of a classroom or in or outside. So we've really been growing this body of work of engaging the community, not only for their well-being, but also, in that hope that they will develop a deeper appreciation for the environment, to be a part of our, team to help take care of this planet that we've all got to take care of. There's only one planet. We've all got to find our ways to work together to care for it. So again, I'll drop that link to the resource in the chat after Moriah starts, and feel free to check out other upcoming opportunities, programs, and volunteer opportunities on our website. So with that, Heritage Conservancy is delighted to co-sponsor this evening, and I will welcome Moriah Hall. She works for University of Pennsylvania as the Associate Director of the Master of Public Health program. And in this program, she works very closely with prospective students and processing admissions. She also volunteers time with other partners across campus in relation to implementation of public health and wellness programs across the campus community. She received her Bachelor of Science at the University of Delaware and Master of Public Health degree at Temple University. And one of the interesting tidbits that we were talking about, among all the other things that sounds that she's passionate about and will share with us, is that she loves being outside, delicious food, and dancing whenever possible. So with that, I will pass it over to Moriah.
Great. Thank you, Shannon. And thank you so much for inviting me here to be with you tonight. I'm really excited to talk a little bit about nature and Nature RX programs in particular. I do have some slides, but I definitely do like to kind of just talk a lot as the slides are up. So please feel free as I'm going through things. If you think of a question, drop something in the chat, drop it in the Q&A box. I'm really looking forward to, when I'm done talking, to hearing more from you or what you want to hear about. So, so please don't be shy. It's always, I do a lot of teaching, and it's always a little funny to be on the webinar format and not see all of you, but I know you're there. So let me just quickly share my screen here and we will get started. All right. Okay. So again, I'm here with you tonight to talk about the healing power of nature, or just, what is that connection between nature and our health and our well-being? So before I launch into what I'm going to talk to you about tonight, I do like to start off by just saying that I'm very mindful of some of these conversations happening without acknowledging, that just saying, go outside, be in nature. Sometimes that is not thoughtful and inclusive. And what I mean by that is, some folks can't be outside safely. Some folks don't have access to green space for a really long distance. Sometimes folks can't physically be outside for a variety of reasons. So I just like to say that right at the top, because a lot of what we talk about in this space is like just how simple it is to go outside and be in nature. But, I always really try to be thoughtful about everyone we're talking to and being really inclusive when we're talking about these ideas. So I just wanted to throw that out there to you as I jump into this, that I'm always thinking about that. And I hope you will too, especially if you find yourself developing programs or doing outreach of any kind, or talking to folks about how, being in nature can be really healing, is just to also be thoughtful of where they are in that moment that you're talking to them. So let's talk about the healing power of nature in the context of our stressful lives. And, I always like to start this conversation also just like every day, all of us here, people that we're interacting with, and everyone broadly, I think at this point, there's a lot of external and internal stressors in our lives. And, I think of this person in this picture here, it's like very relatable, right? Every day we're experiencing a lot just to get through the day. And there's, endless things on our plates. There's things to do. There's, things that we're trying to grapple with, and, things we're responsible for. And it can be very stressful. And especially thinking about all of you on this session tonight as students, being a student in and of itself brings a whole host of stress. And that's, a lot of when we talk about, especially on the campus side and the campus network for these kinds of nature programs, is, we acknowledge that stress that's in our lives, it affects our health, and that mental health and mental well-being and physical health are all very much tied together. And, me being a public health person, I really believe that the whole being, everything about your life can impact your health, and everything in your environment and everything can impact health. And, I always like to say my party trick is like, if you give me any topic or any expert area of expertise, I will tie it back to public health in like one step, because I really believe that is at the core of our well-being. So kind of thinking about that, how do we think about those stressors, and then again, bringing it back to health? And I just like to throw this up there because I'm often finding myself in public health spaces, and we talk about these things as if everybody talks about these things. But I just figured, hey, let's have a working definition of health for this, at least for this talk, or maybe this will be helpful to you in the future for framing. But I really like the WHO, World Health Organization's definition, because it's really simple, and I think it's very inclusive when it comes to how we define health. But the WHO defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And this is kind of like the name of the game for us in public health, and a big kind of shift in how we think about health and well-being versus on the clinical side and the medical side, right? Because we really, we're thinking of the whole person, their whole experience, their life, their environment, and how that impacts their health comprehensively, and not just, is something wrong and can we fix it? I always like to say in public health, if we really did our job perfectly, we put medicine out of business. It's not going to happen, but I like to say that sometimes. So this is just for some contextualizing, I think, when we're thinking about this word health, really think about it comprehensively like this. And I think that that really helps for the framing of these nature programs and nature, being in nature. So, okay, connecting health, if this is our working definition of health, then why are we talking about nature? If I'm a public health person, what am I doing here talking to you tonight? And you may have heard of this in your own lives, in your studies, and maybe you're interested in this, or maybe you personally have spent time outside and felt this yourself. But basically, why are we talking about nature and health? There are a lot of studies that have been done out there in the formal research and literature space. A lot of us have our own experiences or have heard stories from other people along these lines, but there is a lot of science now that backs up that spending time in nature can improve our health. And I really mean health in all the ways that I just talked about in that last slide. So I put this little star next to time so that I didn't forget to mention that time is an interesting construct here too. When I'm saying spending time, what does that mean? How do we operationalize that? And in a lot of the studies that you may come across out there, you'll see all different things how they looked at time and the exposure of nature in time and how that affects your health. But one of the most kind of widely recognized studies that came out a few years back out of the UK, and I think that it's been kind of shown in other studies that have come since, is as little as 120 minutes a week, yes, 2 hours a week of time outside in nature can show these kinds of effects. And they've done a lot, there's a lot of ways that this has been looked at, but some of the kinds of health impact we've seen in, as little as 120 minutes in nature per week is lowering of blood pressure, lowering your stress hormone levels. So not just feeling less stress, but like a physiological measure of stress in your body, reducing nervous system arousal, enhancing immune system functioning, increased self-esteem. And I really love some of what Shannon was just sharing about the programming around social emotional learning. I mean, things like social emotional learning, self-esteem, these are things that if we intervene with young people on some of these and really build those things up, then we can see lasting impact on health on just those indicators. So to show that nature time supports increases in those things, it's just like we should be doubling down on all of these things, right? Reducing anxiety, reducing feelings of isolation. This was a really big thing that came out, especially, we're still kind of in a pandemic here, but, time in the pandemic and people feeling extremely isolated and the health impact of that. So being in nature can also reduce those feelings of isolation. And then improving overall mood. There's been some really interesting things out there, looking at both like clinically mood and, psychiatric centers and using nature as part of a healing process, and also just general mood overall for the average person. So, if I haven't sold you yet, or if you haven't experienced any of this, even on your own anecdotally, nature can really be powerful when it comes to how we feel in our health. All right, so now that I've kind of sold you on this, hopefully, or maybe you were a captive audience and you already believe this, or you're just on this call and you're hanging with me for now. What else can we really think about if we know that this is true, if we know that spending time in nature can be restorative and healing and be good for a variety of health indicators, how do we encourage this and facilitate this out there in the world? So that brings me to kind of the core of what we're going to talk about tonight, which is the concept of Nature RX programming. And at the simplest level, Nature RX as a concept is this idea of giving prescriptions. I like to say nudges, because I think Some programs out there are physical prescription based or are based on prescriptions from clinicians. Sometimes there are other means of just encouraging time in nature that don't have to come from a clinician. But the idea here is that there are prescription or nudge programs for folks to spend time in nature for a variety of reasons. Again, it could be something where somebody has come in for, counseling or for a health screening, or it could be you're talking to your friend and you're noticing that they seem very stressed, or that maybe there's a lot on their plate and they need to push pause. I believe that anyone and everyone is qualified and should give prescriptions or nudges for nature. And we really see that in how these programs exist. We see a whole variety of ways that they're implemented. So I just wanted to highlight a few things with these Nature RX models and concepts, and then I'll tell you a little story about the one that we have going on at Penn on our campus. So at the national level, there are efforts that tie right into this. There's the Park RX America program. So, and all of these things in my slides are linked, and I will absolutely share them today at the end so that they can be shared with you and you can click around. I have lots of links hidden in here that I hope you will click around and check some of these out. But Park RX America is the national kind of Nature RX program. And they're more of a convener and a facilitator. They, if you go to their website, you can really see that they break down by audience, like who can be, how they can support you if you're interested in doing this work. So there's like clinicians that can get resources for if they want to start writing actual prescriptions for nature in their clinical practice. They also have things for just like for in an educational setting. And then they kind of have like anyone else who's interested in doing this work. They have some really great resources and reading lists that I highly recommend poking around and reading. So that's a great national level resource when it comes to this concept of Nature RX programs and really showing you that there's buy-in at all levels here. Actually, there's one of the partners that we've had at Penn is from the U.S. Forestry Service, which is a federal entity. And they were a partner for us on our campus Nature RX program, which was really cool. That happens to be because the person lived in Philadelphia, so we lucked out there. But, there is a lot of national energy around these ideas and supporting local efforts at the national level. And then there's also the Trust for Public Land, which is a long-standing nonprofit organization that supports land use, land development, increasing nature spaces, trying to address climate change. They do a little bit of everything. They're incredible. Their work is incredible, and I highly recommend checking them out on a deeper level. I really like the framing they have, which they do talk about. Nature is not always an equitable concept for everyone. And how do we address that? How do we think about that? So I really think that they're a wonderful resource and a model, and they're also very easy to get in touch with if you wanted to get involved with their work. So I strongly recommend checking them out. And then what I'm part of in my role at Penn and our Nature RX program is this wonderful campus Nature RX network, which is a national campus network of campuses across, the US, but campuses that have their own Nature RX programs. We've kind of all come together and found each other. And this is the landing page and a resource for, all of us that already have Nature RX programs. And it also is a great resource for other campuses who are thinking about this. I strongly recommend checking it out if that's something you're thinking about for your campus. And they have a symposium every year. We come together, we share resources, and it's a really great thing. And it didn't exist just a few years ago. So it is a relatively new network. So I'll take this moment and quickly kind of tell you the story about our campus Nature RX program, because it started in a really interesting way. So my world at Penn is very much MPH all day, every day, working with students and doing a lot of behind the scenes work as an academic administrator. But my background and my training is in public health. So I always have my hand in public health things, whether on campus or outside. I really Nonprofit space especially is where my heart is, and also our campus community. There's so much going on and a lot of opportunities to get involved at the campus level. So a few years back, there was a campus-wide health pitch contest, basically. Anybody on campus could submit a big idea for wellness idea that we got into teams. They're meant to be interdisciplinary teams, faculty, staff, students, all different parts of the university coming together to pitch ideas. And I kind of happened to find a group of people. We happened into a Nature RX idea. And the main people that were in our partnership were from our counseling services center on campus, student health, campus health, the Office of Sustainability on campus, including a landscape architect who was my primary partner on this project. Those of us from the public health world, and also the facilities and real estate services, because they oversee all of the physical grounds of the campus. So we had a really cool interdisciplinary team. We came together, we pulled together this idea after connecting with the folks at Cornell. The Cornell Nature RX program is one of the longest and most robust Nature RX programs in the US. And we reached out to the person who leads that effort, Don Rackow, who is a rock star, an amazing person, and just picked his brain, asked him how to make this happen. We came up with the idea, we pitched it, and we were one of the winners of the pitch contest. So we were able to carry our idea forward with resources from the provost office. So it was this little idea that, no pun intended, we planted a seed, it bloomed, and people were into it. And so ever since that time, we've just been working across the campus. We have all kinds of things that we do to encourage folks to get out in nature on campus. We had this program in place through the COVID of it all, and being not on campus together. And we are an urban campus. So I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. But, how are you an urban campus with a nature program? That's a great question. It's doable. And it also, depends on your campus, of course, and what's nearby. But basically, this was just kind of an idea that we believed in and we took forward. So I tell you this story, not because that's what I'm here to talk about tonight, but I tell you this story because anything can happen if you think it can happen, and go for it. What's the worst that happens? Someone says no to you, right? But it worked, and it's been really great. We have a lot of student engagement. We also work collaboratively with a new farm that started on the grounds of the university. That's a great way we get people outside. We do have actual prescriptions that are given out through counseling services and the student health service. And then we also have, basically, we've kind of trained any academic advisors, any peer leaders on campus to also be able to give out prescriptions, so to speak. But our prescriptions are really, like I said, they're nudges. They're the idea of, hey, you know what? Maybe it would be beneficial for you to spend some time outside with no agenda. We also have an interactive map that shows you where nature is closest to you on our campus. And we really believe in our program that anyone should be able to give a nature prescription. So I'm all in on that. I'll fully disclose that. So that's just a little bit about our Nature RX program. And then these are some of the other things going on. And I strongly encourage checking out the Campus Nature RX network to see what other campuses have programs and what they're up to. And they all look different, which is really fun to see too. And we've learned a lot from each other. So what counts as nature? If we were not in a webinar format, I would wait through any awkward silence necessary for you to tell me and answer my question. But since I'm kind of in the void right now, I'm going to pretend like you're telling me all the things that are nature to you. But here's the thing, there's those kind of classic ideas we have of what is nature, green space and being outside and all of that. But that, don't limit your definition of what nature is. And again, Shannon mentioned, and I think I heard this correctly, is it taking virtual tours of nature on your screen at home? There are a lot of cool tools like that out there. And again, it makes it more accessible for folks who may not be able to get outside physically for a variety of reasons. We're an urban campus at Penn. We're right in Philadelphia, city streets going right through our campus. So how do we think about nature? And a really easy answer I can give you is, even though we are absolutely an urban campus and Philadelphia could do more when it comes to green space, we have a good amount of green space on the campus and nearby, which is a huge asset for us, but we're also the only urban campus in the US that is a designated arboretum, because we have so many varieties of trees and so many trees on our campus, which is just something I absolutely love. And my colleague, Chloe Serwinka, who is the one of the landscape architects on our campus, she gives tree tours, and you can come and learn about that if you ever find yourself in Philadelphia. I strongly recommend it. But even as an urban campus, we were able to, kind of identify all of our green spaces and nature spaces. We did try to use what is nature broadly in our minds, and we actually have a few green roofs. We have outdoor spaces high up on buildings that have plants or a view of the river and nature. So we tried to be really thoughtful about what counts as nature. There are even studies out there that consider like indoor plants, plants that you have inside only, can have a healing impact, can have a health impact. And I am a plant mom, so I can tell you right now that I take my plant mom status very seriously. But those plants, having green around me in my office, in my house, I really do think that they do a lot for that space for me. So I believe in that. And so absolutely, anywhere can have nature if you're thinking broadly. And and Philadelphia, and I know this, you are part of Philadelphia for the, we're all very close to each other. And we mostly have access to nature, even when you have to be a little creative and thinking about how you do that. So whether you're in an urban environment or a rural environment or something in between, suburban, there's a lot that we can get to if we just are thinking about that, and then also reminding ourselves to go outside and to spend that intentional time. And that's kind of also the central thesis of a Nature RX program is it's just the idea, honestly, to remind ourselves to get off the screens and get outside and spend that time out there, and what it can do for us if we put some intentionality behind that. All right. And then I would be remiss if I didn't also talk about, this is a One Health conversation. And, when we think about land use and, all of the things I'm talking about, being in nature, amazing, great. If you are able to spend time in nature, there is a lot of benefit to that. But, we also have to think about, how do we use land in the world, in this country, in the world, everywhere? How are we using land, and what kind of impact is that having big picture? So, for all of us in public health, and same kind of concept in One Health, when we think about health, we're thinking about well-being, we're thinking about our physical environment, we're thinking about the ambient environment. We're thinking about all of these things that go into our health and well-being. And this was just a really interesting report I was looking at. My other area of expertise is kind of in the nutrition-y world, but more food justice, and really thinking about food systems and how they impact the environment, but also how they impact what we eat and how we eat. But I just found this in a special report a few years back from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change about how the world's land is currently being used. And it's really interesting when you look at this, 1% of the world's land is human settlements and infrastructure. So, in the environments that we are often interacting with on this call and in our day-to-day, it may seem like that's the majority of how land is being used. But when you look at it on this big of a scale, it's really fascinating. And also, if you look at what we're seeing in this pie chart, how that land is being used and what that impact is on the environment and on animal health, human health, everything. And so, obviously this is oversimplified when you say, go out in nature, go outside, be outside. But how the land is being used around you in general and in the world, it impacts everything, right? So you know, again, I just like to have some of these moments of kind of contextualizing these things, because I think the idea behind Nature RX is fairly simple, but as often is the case, when you start to unpeel the onion and go deeper and deeper into what our land is being used for, how we think about land, and how we treat nature, it's a very complex situation that we find ourselves in. And you know, not a day goes by that we're seeing, you know, there's almost always a headline about climate change and the urgency of change, and maybe that we've gotten past a lot of some of the changes we needed to make. And it has to be part of the conversation, but especially with you tonight, thinking about One Health, I just wanted to kind of put this out there to you to think about too. And before I wrap up, I just wanted to kind of throw this out, like, the importance of health in all policies, and thinking about from a One Health perspective and a public health perspective. If we don't get creative, if we don't think about how can we do things differently, doing things the way we've always been doing them has not gone really great for us as a civilization, as a human race, right? And just this week, I saw this article come across the New York Times about Belize, basically working with a conservation organization who pledged to financially help them pay down their debt to agree, but Belize had to agree that by going into this agreement, they would protect the resources, their, you know, national resources, and their they have an incredible outdoor wildlife, marine and otherwise. And this is a really unique model that I hope to see more of. The way they kind of described it, it gets very complicated from a financial standpoint, but the idea here is it was almost like refinancing a mortgage in the way that they're buffering this debt repayment, and then the conditions that have come with it are all tied to, you know, fighting against climate change. This is really interesting. So, you know, I like to think about this too, because all of this is related. Like if we're talking about Nature RX and thinking more about that micro level, our own lives or one person's well-being, going in nature and what that can do for them, this is how we can also think about this at a very big scale, and being really creative in how we think about things, land use, combating climate change, and also thinking about the financial challenges we also, you know, and this is not unrelated to the things that cause us stress, right? And gets us right back into the beginning of this conversation of we're feeling stressed. So anyway, I will leave you there. And this is also linked to the article if you want to read more about that. So what's next? I'm going to answer your questions, of course, and I would love to talk to you. But, you know, for yourself, you know, get outside there. We just heard even tonight, the beginning of this session from your two co-sponsors, like amazing opportunities to engage with nature that they're offering to you. So get out there and spread the word and encourage other folks to get out there if they can do so safely or if they're able to. And all of these pictures are from nature spaces on campus where I am in Philadelphia, within maybe a 10-minute walk or less from the center of campus. So I figured I'd throw those up there to you. Actually, the one all the way on the end, on the right-hand side, is this secret little biopond park that's right behind my office. And I spend tons of time there because it's absolutely incredible and it's right there. So that's what I would say. Next, you know, if you're interested in thinking about an HRX program, I already see in the chat, you have a next step there if you're interested. And if not, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to talk more with you about that. And I really appreciate you having me tonight, to join you tonight, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much. That was very stimulating presentation to me. It has really got me thinking a great deal about what we have available at Del Val that we probably take advantage of or actually don't take advantage of every single day. So I did put in the chat that anyone is interested, please email me, because I think that this is something that fits very well with our One Health kind of conversation, and an action that should be pretty easy for us to take. We have a couple of questions. So from Anonymous, do you think this is why many people get seasonal depression, since people aren't going outside as much when it's cold?
Yeah, well, where we live, I'm assuming most of you are here right in the Philadelphia area, where your school is, unless you're remote, which is very possible these days. We get 4 seasons here, and it does get cold. Now, I'll say I'm a February baby and I love the winter. It's not a popular opinion, but yeah, I think in the Northeast where we really do see, those distinct seasons, and being outside is not as feasible, maybe in the colder months. Yeah, I do think that that's part of why we see seasonal affective disorder. I mean, seasonal depression. I also think the isolation piece can be part of that, because in the colder months, if you're not going outside as much, I'm even thinking, I have friends that live in Chicago, and one time they told me, like, we just don't go outside for like several months, and that's that. Even just these last few weeks with the time change and having darkness earlier and less light during the day can be part of that too. So it's not just simply being outside in nature. I think there's a little bit of everything that goes on. But yeah, I definitely think that when we have those colder months, and winters are very unpredictable these days, that can absolutely contribute to spending less time outside, which also could contribute to feeling bummed out, depressed, or having seasonal affective disorder.
Being one who suffers from that, I grew up in Maine, and every single year, by the time February and March rolled around, it was like, I've got to get outside. I need some sunshine. So I certainly can feel for that. Anonymous also brought up that we have an arboretum on campus, and it's a rather large arboretum. We also have, between our 3 campuses, over 1,100 acres of land. So
Wow.
there's a lot of land to wander around. We also have, Bucks County has been so generous in building a trail that runs through the campus. And my guess is that most of the people using it are people who live nearby to Del Val rather than our actual student body. And it's an incredible resource, and something, if you're interested in, folks, get in touch with me. I'm going to go somewhere with this. We don't know where, but we're going to go somewhere with it.
Yeah, and I can't recommend enough to reach out to Don Rackow at Cornell. He's just the expert and wonderful and super helpful.
Great. Well, Madison has a question here. Like you said in the beginning, some people may not have the ability to spend time outside due to health issues, etc. How would you recommend people like this be able to experience the benefits of nature?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are a variety of things you can do. And like I said, even having indoor plants, there are benefits that are seen, if you scientifically study these things, which again, it's like it's good to have the science. I'm not discounting science ever. I work in academia. I guess I would get in trouble if I did that. But, I think that even anecdotally, we hear this. So, it's nice to have the science to back up those kind of anecdotal feelings that we may feel or experience ourselves. But having indoor plants can be one option, because there is a benefit that they've been able to point to from just even having nature inside with you. Also having windows and views, there's also science behind that. And then there are some really cool tools. I will try to pull some together, because we were pulling them together at one point during the height of the pandemic, where the one thing we could kind of do was go outside, but even being in a city, like we were like, can we even be like across the street from people? Like it was such a wild time for all of us. There were some really amazing resources put out by conservancy organizations or forestry services that were like virtual nature tours that you can, it feels like you're there, you're still on a screen, it's not perfect, but they're really amazing. And that's been a great thing. And, I think also it just may depend on the nature, not the nature, poor choice of words, but depending on the limitations, like there's all kinds of creative ways that folks can get outside. I mean, here in Philadelphia, we have an alarmingly high asthma rate, largely due to the air quality. So if we're out here just telling people to go outside and be in nature, that could be actually directly in conflict with one of the top reasons children miss school in Philadelphia, which is asthma. So it is complex. You know, we have to unpack all of that, and there's no perfect answer, but I think being creative and thoughtful and inclusive wherever we can is the way to go.
One of the things that I can recommend for that is get one of those small little bird feeders with suction cup that will attach to your window and feed the birds, because having the birds come right up to your window is just an amazing experience, and they will find your seed and they will happily eat it, and you can watch them, and they'll sing for you, and it's just I recommend bird watching, and you can do it from inside.
And I will say I live in the city, and our neighbors directly behind us put a squirrel picnic bench in, and the amount of wildlife that now occurs just in my backyard area, I think it's adorable. I think some people might find it people don't like squirrels, but it is it feels more like you're in a wildlife setting than just in the city. And it is a nice little touch. So yeah, I totally agree.
Well, I got to say, Moriah, that even the background that you have up on your screen right now is something that puts a smile on my face and makes me feel better just even seeing images of being outside. So I think that there's a lot to be said.
Yes.
Go to a museum, look at some pictures, watch wildlife videos, things that I think make us all feel better.
Yes. I think you kicked on mute somehow.
Yeah. Reg, you muted yourself.
Yeah, I muted myself as soon as I started talking. Okay, so
it's okay. We got this.
Anonymous also added, would you consider sitting under a tree, that is one tree, could be considered being outside in nature? I think everyone in most communities can find one tree where they could sit under or read under or be with somebody else. This might be a way to promote being in nature to everyone of any age.
Yeah, I mean, it's one tree, yes. I would even say one plant, one shrub, anything, or wildlife. I mean, nature, again, we often think of the natural environment of the green space or the green things or but wildlife is nature. So I just said, looking out my city backyard and seeing squirrels and birds and everything, that is nature. It's part of it. But, and also, again, it's in an urban environment, I live right in the city, finding one tree may not be as easy as it sounds everywhere in the city, but there's actually, the city has worked really hard to plant. There was a goal to plant 1 million trees a few years ago. I think they did meet that goal. Aside from the benefits of health, but having a tree in an urban environment, which one tree, yes, it really would make a difference for your health and well-being. But the other interesting thing, and this is my public health nerd brain coming at you, we have major struggles with excessive heat in the city and how dangerous that can be in the city. And having trees and greenery in the city landscape actually also reduces urban heat island, which is a really dangerous high level of heat that happens when you just have concrete and brick everywhere. So when I'm talking about health, I really mean health. I mean all the things about health and your well-being, yes, but also your physical health can be, improved by nature for a variety of physiological and built environment reasons too.
Ben asks, is there evidence for a direct cause-effect relationship between specific sensory components to nature and improved health benefits? For example, is there a measured rise in serotonin due to increased exposure to sunlight?
That's a great question. I've seen a little bit of everything out there in the literature. It depends on the intensity of how people are being, what kind of research study they're doing. It's a little bit hard to measure things that way because you have to almost create a synthetic environment where the person knows you're measuring their physiological reaction to nature. But there have been measurements out there that have attempted this. I don't know serotonin specifically with sunlight. Now, I have to tell you, my husband's a dermatologist, and one thing that makes him a little insane is people justifying too much time in the sun for vitamin D, which you need very little time in the sun, and please protect your skin. But anyway, I think that if you go into the literature, there are all kinds of different studies that have measured different things. But it is a little bit hard to get true measurements of that level because people know they're being studied and there's always a little bit of an effect that you have to explain there. And one thing we ran into, just again, and if this appeals to my nerds out there who like to think about measurement in these ways, with the Nature RX program on our campus, we get this request of like, how do you know if it's working? And are people going outside more because of your program? And, I push back on that because first of all, it'd be almost impossible for us to know that without like tracking people and asking them like, did you go outside because of this program? And when you were outside, how did you feel? And we can absolutely do that. We can ask those questions. It's just a little bit, it just kind of takes away from what we're actually here to do, which is like, if people are outside, I'm already happy. If you're outside because of our program or not, I'm happy. And I think it also goes back to like, what is the goal here, and but a lot of the epidemiology people I work with, they want to measure every little detail, and it's some are easier than others, but I definitely recommend on that Park RX America website that I mentioned, they have some awesome studies linked there. They also have resources and other readings you can do, books that are amazing that can delve into some of this if you're interested in diving a little bit deeper.
Great. And thanks for the offer of sharing your links so that we can maybe get that out to people as well.
Sure.
Claire S., actually, you have struck a tone here, I've got to say, because we've got questions pouring in.
Oh, great.
Claire asks, how can we improve access to nature for inner city folks? The availability of green spaces to enjoy at no cost are unfortunately limited by where you live.
Yeah, I mean, the city and a lot of urban environments, not just Philadelphia. I know Philadelphia the best because I'm here, but this is something that goes back to what I was saying about health and all policies. So in Philadelphia, there is a massive city plan that's been ongoing for many years now. It kind of kicked off in 2010. It's called Philly 2035 or Phila 2035. And the idea is that all of the districts of Philadelphia are getting rezoned, replanned, rethought with the goal of having it done by 2035, which may have been a little bit ambitious, but part of, the public health people really push their way into that process and the city planners and the public health people absolutely must collaborate. And again, this ties right back into the One Health model too, making sure that when city planning is happening, when changes are being considered and made, walkability, green space, even transportation networks, all of that is part of this conversation. And if we don't have the health people, public health and city planners all working together on that, then we will not create change. So part of that has been identifying spaces or areas of the city that really have limited green space. In some ways they'll measure it by what distance from this location to the nearest green space, how many blocks, how many steps, how much physical distance. And they have some really interesting maps that they took at baseline to help them make these decisions. And they are working really hard to increase the green space. The tree planting, all of it is related. Greening of vacant lots. So there's a great partnership with the Philadelphia Horticultural, I can't remember if it's Pennsylvania or Philadelphia PHS. We love alphabet soup in our worlds, right? So PHS is the Horticultural Society here in Philly. And they work with city planners and public health people to do all kinds of work around lots that are not currently being used for housing, making them green spaces like micro parks. There's this whole movement of like parklets. They're like taking parking spaces and greening them. So they're trying to be really creative. I'm sure there are a lot of other cities doing cool things. So, I just like to say it takes creative thinking and collaboration across sectors, partners you may have never thought you needed to have. Like starting a Nature RX program with a landscape architect as a public health person. I mean, that was so fun and interesting. We both brought so many different things to the table and learned from each other and created something cool. So, I mean, I think it's a lot of it comes back to like, everyone needs to be at the table when policies are going in, when redistricting and city planning is happening. All of that matters.
Great. We are about at our time. Are you willing to maybe give us
Yeah,
two more questions?
I'm
Maybe?
happy to stick around for a few more questions. This is the fun part. So
Um, let's see here. So, have you partnered with Latino Outdoors, Hoods to Woods, or other outdoor groups?
So because our Nature RX program is really specific to our campus community, we have a lot of our partners are mostly like surrounding Philadelphia, the campus area. So like, for example, we do work with Morris Arboretum. We work with the Children's Hospital because it's right there and they actually had their own nature prescription program. We don't specifically work with these organizations, but we're all like, we want to work with anyone and everyone, and Philadelphia, and even at the county levels. I know there are efforts, like I shared more like, you know, local campus level, city level, national level, but having partnered, you know, folks are out there doing great things. We don't need to be out here reinventing the wheel. We need to partner. So if those organizations have a lot of great momentum, encouraging folks to be outside, we should be partnering, right? So, I mean, for our Nature RX program, that's just the campus, like we won't say no to any partners, but I do think because our target audience for this particular piece of it is the campus community, there's a point where like our radius doesn't make as much sense, but like we're always down to partner and also just like learn from folks who are doing this well. Like if you are a nonprofit organization or a grassroots organization that has really figured out how to get young people outside, or, you know, like here in Philly, we have some really cool organizations that do like running programs with kids, Philadelphia school district kids, so that they have like an organized activity outside after school hours. Like it's so popular, and it was like a population that was not getting engaged in this way at all. And so like we love partnering with them. I mean, there's so many great things already happening. So on your campus, if you decided you wanted to start an HRX program for your campus, like I would absolutely look around. You know, there are partners here on this call right now that you just heard from in the beginning of this talk with amazing outdoor activities that that should be partners. And that has served us really well, like partnering with people who are already doing the work and learning from them and supporting their work and them supporting our work is the only way we've been able to do this. So yes, to all partners. So we haven't partnered with them personally, but I love to find new organizations and different ways people are doing this work at any time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that we have two partners just sitting on the
Yes.
on the co-sponsors right here. And we also are very fortunate that we have some boroughs that are adjacent to our campus that are very interested in giving people outside opportunities, green space opportunities. And certainly I think the number of partners potential is enormous. I'm going to kind of combine our two last questions here into one enormous question. So this is both from Claire and from an anonymous. And so to start out with, is there any research that shows nature shows, documentaries like Planet Earth contribute to well-being? Anecdotally, I comfort watch nature documentaries all the time. And anonymous adds in, have you seen any information on the impact on zoo, wildlife, or park outreach events where they bring the animals outdoors to the classroom?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know specific research off the top of my head that looked at that, but I'm going to say, I think everyone should do those things, you know, watch nature shows, documentaries. I think there's a lot of reasons where that can be great. I think it helps you stay connected to like, we are truly all one. We're all on one planet together. We're together in this effort. Like any benefits that we can get from ourselves being outside or experiencing nature, I mean, we should be thinking about the big picture. And if we don't do our part to have a reciprocal relationship. Nature gives us a lot. We got to give nature a lot. Like we need to take care, and we haven't done a great job of this. So that's why I really think that land use then, how we think about climate change and all of that, it's absolutely part of this conversation. So yeah, I mean, I think if something brings you comfort, I lean into that, period. I don't know if there's formal research, but I just say, if it feels good, you should do it. And I'm sure that people feel that benefit, not just you. So I say, here's an open prescription to watch nature documentaries and shows. Yes, love to see it. And then as far as like zoo and wildlife, I don't know of anything specific on our campus that does. Well, okay, let me back up. I will say we have a working dog center on campus. I'm also a dog mom in addition to being a plant mom. So I will say that the working dog center does really cool work because they're training dogs that will go out and be companion dogs for seeing eye dogs. There will be dogs who like sniff for drugs and bombs and all the things. Like they're actually going to have jobs, which I just think that's always very funny. Like they're actually going to be working employed dogs. So they get trained at the working dog center and they're fostered by folks. But the working dog center does a lot of really great outreach where they bring the dogs for mental wellness events, for people to like be with the dogs and pet the dogs on campus, not the zoo, but we've definitely had like one time we had like a baby goats were brought on campus during like finals week, and anyone could just come and like pet and be with baby goats on campus outside. So it was like encouraging folks to be outside, and there were adorable baby animals there. So maybe not so much the formality of the zoo, but there's definitely those things happening in my orbit. And also I will say that the campus, we are talking about land use. Universities love to take land and develop it. And that is something we're constantly fighting against. And so we did somehow swindle our way into taking a chunk of land on campus and making it a working farm. And the farm, not only is it a working farm, and all the food that's grown there actually goes out to community members who want boxes of produce, or students who are first generation low income students on campus can get a box of produce that comes from the farm. But actually working on the farm, you're in nature, great things, right? And they also do fun events where they'll bring folks in for programming. Sometimes they'll bring animals to the farm. So anyway, it's lots of cool things you can do if you have the land, the space, a faculty member who's like, hey, we're all feeling stressed out. So today instead of class, we're going outside and we're going to like look at birds. I love all of those things. And sometimes faculty will hold class outside from time to time in our program if we can. So, be creative, because I mean, Nature RX, the idea is, you're encouraging folks to go out in nature. That could be a team sport. That can be an individual thing. That could be, going out and listening to a podcast and walking around, or it could be just sitting quietly. You can do mindfulness exercises. There's like anything. We don't mind what you do if you're outside, because it doesn't seem to matter, because usually just being outside does bring those benefits in back to you. So don't stress too much about what are you doing or how should we get people outside. I think it's like, get them out there. And then if you can entice them with baby animals, like, yes, let's do that.
Well, and there was a question that I had been looking for before, and I kind of lost it again, and Shannon has kind of reminded me of it. Are there any plans to develop a free online course for people to educate themselves about therapeutic horticulture or ecotherapy? Also, is there a hub or website that you can find a comprehensive collections that the different studies showing the positive results of nature health? And I think that's going to probably have to wrap us up this evening.
Yeah. So to the second question first, some of those links that are in my presentation will take you to places that have a nice, like, long list of resources. So the also the Campus RX, Nature RX network, but the Nature RX America. Oh my gosh, my brain's starting to misfire. I guess it is time to wrap up. They have a ton of great like landing pages with links, and they're PDF articles, so you don't have to go searching into a database to find them. I know you're all students, so you probably have access to that anyway, but like I worked in the nonprofit sector for a long time, and like we can't get into databases. So they actually have PDF them, so they're approachable to anyone. So anyone can see them just on their free website. And then same thing with the Land Trust website. They have tons of articles, resources. They have a whole section on health and on equality and equity in this work. I strongly recommend checking them out because they also share strategies that they're implementing to address those things and how you can support their work or be part of their work or replicate their work. So that's where I would send you. And as far as like a free course, I would love to see that happen. We actually just for the first time offered a course like this on our campus. It was part of our Nature RX partnership, and a faculty member who is really dedicated to this work in the School of Education offered like the, wellness benefits of nature course. And it's open to any Penn student, obviously, but I mean, she has the course. She also worked collaboratively with Don Rackow at Cornell, who has taught similar courses. So like, I wouldn't be surprised if one day we saw that become something that would be available widely. I would love to see that happen. And maybe I will try to make that happen if there's interest in that. So heard, noted, and I'm a doer. So just look out. I would love to do that, but I'm always happy to follow up with anybody too.
Great. Thank you so much. Shannon, do you have some final thoughts or words that you would like to impart to us?
Well, that was all great. I left a little link in the one of the questions as well. Just the Children in Nature Network has a lot of resources on the research benefits for especially youth under 18 years old, or even young adults. They get into some studies there, but it's health benefits, social emotional learning, educational benefits. Really, there's just so much that we can learn and experience and enjoy with nature. And then, again, as Moriah noted, it's how do we then make sure that, we're taking from nature those benefits, but then also trying to find our ways to give back to protect that land use. Of course, we've been a land trust as an organization at Heritage Conservancy for a very long time. So, that's a really critical piece because once it's gone, we're going to have a hard time bringing it back. So yeah, so many great benefits.
Well, thank you, Shannon. I think that this has certainly sparked a lot of thoughts for me as to how we can expand on our partnership. And unfortunately, Diane had to leave us this evening. She had another meeting to jump into. But again, Bucks County Audubon Society is there. They have Honey Hollow facilities, which are great for taking a walk through, bird watching, and all the events that they offer. And Moriah, thank you so much for a very stimulating conversation here. Just by the number of questions we have, this is a major hit. And thank you so much for coming this evening.
And thank you so much for having me. And thank you for all the questions and engagement. Like that made my job way more fun. So please reach out and get in touch anytime. But thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you all for coming this evening. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening and that you'll be back to see us in the spring. We have a whole new slate of One Health seminars coming up. This will continue. And I think we've got another major project to work on now. Good night, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Again.